Another episode of Plague Diaries. I let that one go a little bit long. That's Starfighters with Alley Cat Blues. I don't know, that song was just in my head, man, all day. And you probably never heard of these guys, and I recommend that you check them out. However, they're pretty much only available as like a physical copy or on YouTube or something like that, because I found out about them when I was, I don't know, man, like maybe in middle school, listening to I-95 FM. I think that was out of Connecticut. And just to check that out, play like hard rock radio. And sometimes something obscure like that would come on. And I remember hearing this song when I was a kid and being like, yeah, this is like some hard rock, you know, and it's a band called Starfighters. So I went down to the old book and record store, and they happened to have this record, the self-titled Starfighters record with the song Alley Cat Blues on it. And it's quite a record, actually. That song is like exactly the kind of shit that I like from that era, late 70s, early 80s. This record came out in 1981. And I think it's kind of cool that it doesn't really exist except for the physical form. If you can locate an LP, or I mean, it was released on compact disc later, but you know, it's like one of those relics. In preparation for this episode, I actually looked up a little bit about the band, and it turns out that Steve Young played guitar for them. And Steve Young is a nephew of, you guessed it, Malcolm and Angus Young of AC/DC. The band's British, and I'm not sure if all you guys know that the Young brothers, as well as Bon Scott, were originally from the UK, and they relocated to Australia. So it's a little fun fact about AC/DC, another one of my favorite bands. And so if you look up Starfighters, you want to find out some information about them, they list them as a new wave of British heavy metal band. And, that would put them along with Tigers of Pantang, Diamond Head, those types of bands. Iron Maiden, I guess, is technically a new wave of British heavy metal band. Motorhead, Venom. So as you see, that I think that we take for granted that the moniker new wave of British heavy metal was most likely made up by people who write for magazines like Kerrang or whatever, because that's what journalists do. And I'm going to share with you just some of my experiences with journalism and how much of a drag it can be sometimes talking to these people. As some of you know, the new Tombs record, Under Sullen Skies, was released yesterday. Today's Saturday. And I'm really happy. I'm really proud of the record. I think it's, I feel personally, it's probably one of the finer, most satisfying moments of my meager career as a musician and, guy making extreme music or whatever. And, I'm really proud of it. And I really appreciate all the kind words that you guys have said. And, get lots of messages. And it means a lot to me because every year I feel grateful that I'm still able to do this. You know what I mean? I'm not a 25-year-old guy anymore. You know what I mean? And, it's the years go by, you start doubting yourself sometimes. You start thinking about, when it's going to be time to give this whole thing up, or if it's time, or whatever, or how am I going to approach this, and I just think that I still got a lot left in me to get out. And I'm always afraid, I guess, of being one of those people whose best years are behind them, and they stuck around like way too long, and they keep making records and they're losing touch, and all this kind of stuff. I always think back to when I was in high school, when I was a senior. There were these two dudes that I played football with that were a year ahead of me, and so they were out of high school by the time I was a senior, because they graduated the year before. And there was a parking lot, which actually at my high school, they built a whole new wing over this parking lot, so it doesn't exist anymore. But there were like basketball, courts and things like that there. The buses parked there, some teachers, things like that. And I just remember these guys, like they were 18 years old. I don't know if they got jobs after high school, probably still lived with their parents. And I would see them hanging around the high school. I think they dated girls who were seniors or maybe even juniors. And I remember sitting in my late classes, whatever classes I had, 7th or 8th period, looking out the window and seeing these guys playing basketball out in the parking lot, and thinking, man, these guys have just stuck around like way too long, and they should probably move on into whatever phase is the next thing for them. And I always use that analogy whenever I feel like I've outstayed my welcome somewhere, and that has to do with living in Greenpoint in Brooklyn too, where there were some great years living in Brooklyn. There was like cool times, like very high points, a lot of good people. There was like a period for sure where it was great living there, and one by one, a lot of my friends moved away. There's still definitely people who are going to live and die in New York City that are still there. And then the neighborhood started changing. A lot of the cooler spots started closing. For example, Photo Play, which was like this incredible video store that was in the neighborhood, and one of the best places ever, man. You go in there, it was all set up like a record store actually, where you could flip through these flats that had the DVD box flattened out, and you would just take that to the counter, and one of the guys that worked there would get you your stuff, you know what I mean, your DVD. And the owner, this dude Michael, would just kind of float around the store, talk to people if you had a question about a movie, or if he would make recommendations. And he never rang you up, but he was like around all the time. I would talk to him all the time I went in there, and if he was there, that is, I would talk to him about movies and stuff I'm looking forward to, and he would make recommendations based on what I told him. And it's just like that whole one-on-one tactile experience of being in the real world, as opposed to the streaming online world that has been, kind of exacerbated by this whole pandemic that we're living through. But yeah, even living in Greenpoint, when places like that closed, when this really cool burrito joint, Papacito's, closed, when everyone either got fired or quit from Brooklyn Label, one of the restaurants that I dug, and they sold it, and some other clown took it over, and now it's like a totally different thing. And the condos went up, and they rezoned it, and I was like still living there. And I started feeling like these two guys that have outlived their welcome because everything had changed. So, and that's how I feel about music. And maybe I guess I assess every year, like, what, okay, is it still fun for me? Is it still good? Can I perform? Can I play hard? Am I writing material that's interesting? Am I able to relate to people? And yeah, you kind of get to that phase of your life where you're checking in. And yeah, with the release of Under Sullen Skies, you never know. I never know if anyone cares or is interested in what we're doing or all this other business. And that's why I'm overjoyed when I see or I get messages from people or I see the kind words and the appreciation that's out there. And it's, very meaningful to me. And, it helps get through this period right now. I mean, I feel weird that I'm not in a van right now driving out to play some gig somewhere across the country. That's usually what I would be doing when we have a new record. But instead, I'm sitting home, doing my day job and trying to get ready for the holiday and all this other fun stuff, getting tested for COVID-19. And yeah, it's been a hard year, man. That's for sure. And doing a whole lot of press, which it's funny. I was thinking about this when I was looking up Starfighters and how I'm like, oh wow, they refer to them as a new wave of British heavy metal band. And I wonder how many of the bands that were part of the new wave of British heavy metal actually consider themselves to be part of the new wave of British heavy metal. Like if you asked Lemmy, or Kronos or one of these guys, or Paul Di'Anno or Steve Young from Starfighters, they probably would just say that they play rock and roll music or hard rock or whatever, metal or heavy metal music. So, like I said, I've been doing all this press and talking to these different journalists, and the whole post black metal thing comes up when they talk about Tombs, and I'm like, what the fuck is post black metal? I mean, what I think of is a bunch of guys with tight pants and mustaches playing music that probably doesn't really sound like what we're doing in Tombs. And I just wonder where that term came from and who actually consider themselves to be part of this like post black metal scene. And it's kind of a bummer. It's I'm talking to you guys because I know there's like we're a small tight knit group here, and aside from just a handful of us, there's probably not a whole lot of people listening to this right now. But yeah, and I definitely am quick to point out that this term is not a real term. Like whenever they ask me about how do you feel, usually some European guys asking me this question. How do I feel about this? And I'm like, I have no feelings because it doesn't exist, to me. It's like talking to a wolf and asking the wolf if he believes in good or evil. The wolf doesn't see good or evil. He just exists in this savage world, and that's how I feel. I don't see post black metal. I just see what we are, So, and I don't even know what that is. I mean, I know we play metallic style music, heavy metal, like sure. I even hesitate to call Tombs a black metal band, even though that probably is one of the closest genres of music that we fit into. But there's so much more stuff that we add to the mix, and there's like death rock, like punk music, hardcore, thrash, grind, like all this stuff kind of mixes together to make what we're doing. And I don't know. First it was sludge. That was the term that I really hated. First they would call Tombs a sludge band or sludge whatever. And I thought that was an even more useless term to refer to music as sludge. And I was like, damn, like, you guys make a living writing, try coming up with more creative ways of describing music instead of these stupid, useless, devoid of any meaning names that you guys have. And not you guys, but these writers. Sludge, now it's post black metal. And I don't know what to say about any of that stuff. All I know is I don't think anyone that actually listens to the band has referred to us as that. And that's kind of cool. And I appreciate that no one, no one that's a real fan of music even acknowledges that term. So, but anyway, yeah, it's been a lot of good stuff going on as far as that goes. Getting material out there, putting out records. Another really funny question that they ask is why did we put out an LP this year? And my answer is actually very simple. The answer is because we were scheduled to release this record in the fall of 2020, which was set up last year, this whole schedule. You know, usually record labels, by the first quarter of the year, already have, well before that, they're actually, initiating their plan. But by the end of the year, most record labels have a fairly complete schedule of releases for the year after. So right now, Season of Mist probably has the whole 2021 planned out. Or, I mean, maybe not so much during this pandemic era that we're living through, but typically by the time November or December rolls around, labels will have the following year planned out, because if you think about it, if there's a record that's coming out in February or March, it's probably being recorded right now. That's kind of how things work. So you have to look ahead, and I find it unusual that a journalist wouldn't really understand that sometimes they think you record the record onto like a cassette tape or something and then send it to the pressing plant, and then 2 weeks later you release the album. I mean, I don't know if that's how these guys think sometimes, but anyway, I'm just venting, I guess, because I've spent a lot of time answering the same questions over and over again and suffering through some of these conversations where they ask me things like that. And I mean, another thing that I do personally is I interview people all the time, and I try to figure out interesting questions to ask them, and not just like, why do you put out a record this year, or this like completely stupid genre that was made up, how does that apply to you? I try to talk about something more meaningful. So I guess that's why I grow impatient with these guys sometimes. Anyway, if you're a journalist out there, I hope you don't fall into that camp, because I mean everything I say. So there you go. There's a couple of requests from the internet, from the internets. A couple things happen. Thank you, Matt, for turning me on to the King Cast, which is a Stephen King horror podcast. It's these two guys. I just listened to a bunch of episodes over between yesterday and today, and Matt recommended it to me. There was the episode that talks about Creepshow has Richard Stanley on it, and they discuss the Creepshow movie, and Richard talks about his plans to make 2 more Lovecraftian films. And Matt, from all the stuff that he's probably heard me talk about or seen online, or even listened to the Tombs material, probably figured out that I was a huge H.P. Lovecraft fan. And thanks for hooking me up. I've been, binging several episodes in a row, and that's pretty awesome. And Nick asked a question about vocals. I mean, he has listened to the new record and was complimenting on my vocal performances on this record, complimenting me on my vocal performances on Under Sullen Skies. And he wants to know how I started singing and when I started singing. And that's actually kind of an interesting question. And so I guess I'll answer that. Once again, thank you. Any kind words is appreciated. And specifically, when it comes to vocals, I would say over the last 5, 6, 7 years, I've really put a lot of intention into becoming a better vocalist because I've wanted to do more with each record. And this current release is, kind of the end result of several years of trying different things and being influenced by other singers and that kind of thing, and doing my own research and practice. And short of actually paying for lessons, doing a lot of research and training independently on how to use my voice better. So cheers. Thank you very much. How I started singing. Well, when I started playing guitar and playing in bands, I never thought that I would be a vocalist ever. I just figured, that's too much. Like, I didn't want to be a front man because I was very interested in playing guitar and expressing myself with that instrument. And I just didn't think I would have the kind of gusto to be a lead singer, like John Brannon or Henry Rollins or be such like a virtuoso like Ronnie James Dio or someone Rob Halford or something like that. I don't think I had it in me to do those kinds of things. And so I just focused on playing guitar. And when I started doing the band Anodyne, it was me and Taz Niles, who played drums in La Gratona and Eye for an Eye, and he's done a whole other bunch of other bands since then too. And he and I started playing together in the practice space, and a good friend Chris put us in touch. Actually, he was like, "Yeah, you guys should know each other because you're into the kind of the same stuff. You're coming from the same place, and you should start playing together." So, we just went down to the space, started jamming, started making noise. Taz had like a very free form idea what he wanted to do with the band, or he didn't even really want it to be a band. He wanted it just to be a series of jams and maybe not play live or, And during that phase of my life, I was like, pretty, been going through some hard times on a personal level. So I just needed something to do with my time at night. I was working at a warehouse during the day. And, that kept me occupied. And then when the whistle blew at 5, I needed something to do, someplace to put my time and energy. So to show up at the practice space every night was a good thing for me. And so that's what I ended up doing. Slowly, the band evolved, and I was like, yeah, we should, maybe get like someone to do vocals. And in my mind, I wanted to be like Greg Ginn or something like that, like doing this, crazy chaotic solos and playing, just focusing on playing and not thinking about singing. In my mind, I wanted to get some guy like Rollins or John Brannon or someone like that, or like a David Yao type of dude to be the singer in the band, or Tim Singer or, one of these guys, So Taz ended up called his friend at the time. Well, he's my friend too, but I didn't really know him until he walked into the practice space that night. Our friend Al Naor, who used to play in Spore, which is how I knew him. I knew him from being in Spore, which is like a pretty fine band from the early 90s in Boston. And since then, or at the time, he started doing this band called 27, which is, like a quiet kind of indie rock thing. But I knew that Al was into noise and playing loud and all this other stuff. So, and, into like experimental kind of music. And that was kind of like where we were coming from it back then. It was like this experimental, process of weeding out Black Flag, Throbbing Gristle kind of thing. We were trying to just make evil sounding noisy shit. So that's what it started out as. So Al showed up. He had all these gadgets with him, which was cool, like, noisemakers. He had his homemade microphone that he was singing through, and I thought that was pretty cool. He was doing vocals. Vocals sounded cool, and we made a demo. And while we were in the studio, Al encouraged me to sing on one of the songs, like a little bit, like some backups. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll give it a shot. And I guess that was the beginning of where I started entertaining the thought of being a vocalist. It was like in those early days of 1996 when we were in the practice space and in the studio, and I had no real aspirations for being like a lead vocalist or anything. As time went by, the band changed a little bit, and Al ended up leaving and focusing more of his energy on doing 27, and I just took over singing. And it was just like that. I remember, I just started singing. There was a period of time where we had a second guitar player, and he was my roommate, Dean Baltalonis, and he and I have a checkered past, and this guy, like, it was trouble. Let's put it this way. And that's why I'm using his full name, because I don't care if he hears this or finds out or whatever. So Dean was filling in as like a second guitar player. He was also auditioning to play in the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, which was like a very big band at the time. I guess they still are. And he did a couple of shows with us. He's by as much as a jackass as I think he is as a person, I think he's an incredibly talented musician. So he was able to do whatever. But I remember we had a bunch of gigs lined up in Canada and in like upstate New York, like Plattsburgh was where we were playing. So from Boston, we all lived in Boston at the time. We had to get up like super, super early in the morning and leave, because we actually had two shows. We had like a afternoon show, and then there was an evening show, and then we were playing in Canada. And then, that's kind of, we used to do stuff like that all the time. We would play in the afternoon and play at night. Even some of the early Tombs tours, for example, we played an afternoon show at ABC No Rio one day, and then we drove down to Philly and played a show. And then there was like actually it was pretty crazy. It was like 2 days and like 3 shows in like 12 hours or something like that. So, I told Dean, I'm going to come and pick you up at like 5 or whatever, 5:30. So we went to the practice space or whatever. And then I went to pick him up first. No answer. And I'm like, what the fuck, man? So hit the doorbell, try calling, no answer. I had to go to a payphone actually to make the phone call. That's how long ago this was. And I'm like, oh shit. So what do I do? So that's how Anodyne became a 3-piece. Fuck, man. Like, I'd written those songs. I knew how to play them. I was singing all these songs, and it was almost like you get pushed out into the deep end of the pool. Cause like the whole thing was like, all right, well, we have a second guitar player. So if not as tight as I should be on guitar, we got this other guy. So that was kind of like my trial by fire of singing and playing guitar in a 3-piece band. So yeah, that was then that band just did its thing. I got more and more comfortable, like screaming and doing all this stuff, and developed. I got to be honest with you guys. I had no idea how to actually sing or use my voice the right way or any of that stuff throughout the entire career of Anodyne. I was just making it up as I went along. And then after that, we did Versoma with Jamie, my buddy Jamie Getz, and that was a cool band, very short-lived. We did, I think, 15 shows or something like that, and released an album. And for the first time in my life, though, there was like this expectation that the band would do something. You know what I mean? Where like, yeah, it's got, meet these guys from these bands, and, this one dude from, Hope Conspiracy, and, me and Jamie, and Robotic Empire wanted to put out a record just based on some demos, or I don't even know if we actually even if Andy even really knew what we sounded like. Maybe just some he saw us live, or I don't even remember how that happened. Jamie took care of that. And I sang in that band. Getz at the time, was way further along with his melodic singing prowess than I was. So he was actually singing melodies and, doing stuff with his voice that I hadn't ever really attempted to do. I was still very much in like the screaming, vocal style of Anodyne, but still trying to reach a little bit, I guess, into trying to develop like a bag of tricks. You know what I mean? And during the beginning of that band, that was actually one of the bands where we first started doing demos because of the vocals. And I think during that period is when I started thinking about rehearsing in a different way. And I mean, I wasn't really actively doing any of this stuff at the time, but it was crossing my mind that, yeah, if you make a demo, you can practice stuff with your voice and try different things out. And prior to that, it was all just go, hit play and go. Like no real pre-production or any of that kind of stuff. And also just FYI, like when Anodyne was first starting out, like the only pre-production that we could have done was to have like one of these stereo boom boxes with a cassette tape in it. And that was really like it. I remember when I started doing the band, I was with Taz and I was like, you know what, man, it'd be cool if we were able to record some of this stuff. So I drove out to the Arsenal Mall in Watertown. And I went to, I don't even know what, I think it was Caldors or something like that. And I went through and I found just like the cheapest boombox that I could find that had a cassette deck in it that had a play and record thing. And I brought that to the practice space and we recorded hours and hours and hours of jams and just rough ideas. But it's not like today where everyone's got Pro Tools, or Ableton or Logic or whatever people use, Bandcamp, any of that stuff, and their phones. None of that stuff existed back then. And but when I was doing Versoma, that's when I was getting more into recording, like on my own, and I had a Pro Tools set up, and I was able to bring stuff to the practice space and multi-track things and try out different guitar layers and try different things with my voice, but it was the very, very, very beginning of all that kind of stuff, and I hadn't really understood where I wanted to go with anything. But I guess like I bring up Versoma because that is kind of the bridge. That was like a good experience for me to do because even though I wasn't really getting it, I saw that there was at least potential to do some interesting stuff with my voice. And, that band was around. We did its, ran its course. We played a show at this venue in New York City it's closed now. I forgot the name of the venue, but it was a short-lived, like, rock music venue off of, like, Houston Street. And it was during the time when New York was cool, when it was, like, you had places to see live music and stuff like that. And aside from St. Vitus, like Vitus is the jam. That's like, without St. Vitus, I think that that's like one of the greatest clubs in New York City. That's right up there with like CB's, in my opinion. And there was some other great places, like the Acheron was awesome. Never really played there as much as I would have liked to, but it was still a cool spot. And then there's like mad lofts and stuff out in Bushwick, and I don't know how many of those places were doing shows up until now. But I know that there was a really big scene for that. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. So, the last Versoma show was some venue that doesn't exist anymore. And, there was some conflicts there. Not between Jamie and I, but me and the bass player in that band. Like in the middle of a song, he like jumped off stage and grabbed a beer. And I was like, I kind of braced him up after the set. I was like, what the fuck you think you're doing? Not the most professional move, in my opinion. And, so that band did its thing. And then immediately I started doing Tombs after that, and kind of went into it, started the band with no expectation because there was all this internal. I mean, ultimately Versoma didn't amount to very much. Just one record. Every now and then people say, "Oh, I love that record." And I'm like, great, but it's not my finest piece out there, in my opinion. It's something that like I said, it's like this like weird little thing that I did, and it's cool, but the whole thing it wasn't fully manifested, I guess. And that's why I'm always reluctant to acknowledge that record as anything but just like an experiment, I guess. But yeah, like there was this weird expectation that band was going to become something. And I guess as a result of that, when I started doing Tombs, I had no expectations. I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to make music I like. I'm just going to use the band as a palette to throw ideas on, to work out stuff, to just be creative, not put limits on myself, and not try to write songs that people would necessarily like, to fail at certain things, to, try out ideas and, just kind of with no regard, I guess. And that's kind of like what the first early material is. I mean, I don't know how many of you out there have actually heard some of the early Tombs stuff, but it is it's very different than what the band sounds like now. It is, well, in all honesty, half of that material I had actually written for Versoma. So there's that very first Tombs EP that came out between my old label, Black Box Recordings, and Level Plane, who released the last Anodyne record. And half of that record was written as like with Versoma in mind. So I had these songs and I just kind of like retooled them to be Tombs material. On that first EP is when I started thinking about myself more as a vocalist as opposed to a guy just screaming words into a microphone and playing chaotic guitar riffs. And I just think that there was more intention and kind of slowed things down a little bit, thought about songwriting, thought more about, melody, not just being, balls out extreme all the time. And I think that's pretty much how things started out. And that's the beginning, I guess, of where I am now. And over the years, I started having more confidence in what I was able to do. And, confidence, I use that word only because I am confident that I put the hours that were required to accomplish the goal into it. And I think that's what real confidence is, to walk around and just be like, yeah, I can do all this shit, and not put the work in is foolhardy in my, in my opinion. And to be so cocksure of your abilities without actually putting the required amount of effort into it is foolhardy. So yeah, that's why I have some confidence right now, because I know that I put the time into it. And I have always been a huge admirer of David Bowie, Iggy Pop, Peter Murphy from Bauhaus, Carl McCoy from Fields of the Nephilim, Ian Curtis of Joy Division. Always been huge admirers of what those guys did with their voice. And that's been the slow metamorphosis, I guess, of my clean, less extreme version of what the vocals and Tombs are all about. Is like kind of a melding of all those things. And I don't know, it's just it keeps me on my toes. I enjoy mixing all this stuff together and some of my favorite bands are bands that do exactly that. I mean, think about Celtic Frost and Tom Warrior, and think about Triptychon. You know, I always go back to those particular bands because I see that as being like a huge inspiration for what Tombs does, because there's a metal thing going on, but there's also this kind of gothic thing going on. Oh, and I love. How could I forget Michael Girard from the Swans? I mean, if you want to talk about totally ripping someone off, I feel like I would totally rip off Michael Girard. I think that that's like, you can go back and listen to Children of God and Soundtracks for the Blind and check out his voice and the way he uses his voice. And I think that you can listen to Under Sullen Skies and you'll see a lot of similarities, at least to what I'm trying to do. You know, I'm not so, you know, I don't have the hubris to say that we've approached any level of intensity that band has approached. But I'm just saying that if you want to really get in there and figure out who I rip off and, you know, where it all comes from, you can listen to those two records. Yeah. And once again, Swans are another band where it's like they started out one place, they went someplace else in the middle, and then they went into a different realm towards the end. And I guess that's sort of what I want to accomplish with Tombs, you know. Similar to, you know, Swans. Swans have had, I don't know how many different members in and out of the band. And also tying it back to talking to journalists, that's another question that fucking bugs me, is like the lineups and all this stuff. I'm like, motherfucker, like, did you guys interview Napalm Death, you know, or something like that? That band has had, yeah, there's no original members left. It's like, you know, I mean, I love Barney and I love Shane Embury, but they've had so many different people in and out of that band. You know, they've changed singers. They can make 3 bands out of Napalm Death. You know, the Swans, there's like 17 different bands that have come from all the guys that were in that band. So why don't you bug those guys about lineups and stuff? You know, it's like, it makes it sound like Tombs is the first band that's ever had different members in it. And I'm like, yeah, it's just something that bothers me because the questions are the same with every single person that I talk to. And maybe what they should do is I should send them this podcast and be like, look, before you guys write up your interview questions, listen to this 45-minute piece, and then hopefully some of your questions will be answered. And then we can go on and talk about real things, which is what I would rather do. Anyway, thanks for hanging in there. Appreciate it. Everyone, be smart over the holidays and take care of yourselves. And, you know, I just be safe. And hopefully in 2021, we'll be out on the road again, at least in some capacity. And I'll be able to get out there and hopefully meet up with some of you guys. And, yeah, by the way, keep the questions coming, man. I enjoy that. It's like, you know, I don't mind answering questions. If people have anything they want to know, for sure, man. It makes for an interesting time. So anyway, have a good evening, everyone. Enjoy the holidays, and I'll talk to you soon.
I'm alone, schoolboy. Just came into town.